Political power follows population. During the last century, we saw the massive urbanization unlike any time in world history. The reverse of this, of course, is that many of the rural and the working poor no longer have voters that care about their interest or their lifestyle. Instead, they have ignorant, patronizing bureaucrats and a host of predatory corporations who are looking to cement their power. One example I'll give is Australia. Currently, about 85% of Australia's population lives along the coast. Another one is the UK. One of the reasons that there was massive influx into the cities early in the Industrial Revolution is that a lot of public land began getting privatized. This had the effect of forcing people who used to be self-sufficient, living off the land, to work for sustenance wages in a factory somewhere. Throughout the 20th century, there was a lot of investment in social safety nets, infrastructure, and other projects in both countries. That changed after the 80s. A lot of the economy was deregulated, and with it, a lot of the media. A man named Rupert Murdoch, the guy who would later found Fox News, consolidated media in both countries. Under his watch, every tragedy became milked for all it was worth. Using his expanded reach, he helped turn yellow journalism and media fearmongering into an art form. Since there were cuts to healthcare and mental health, a lot of people who were laid off or who had no alternative or felt they had no alternative were driven to their breaking point. A man in the UK, in Dunblane, killed several school children. This inspired copycats around the world, like Port Arthur in Tasmania, or Arona in New Zealand. Instead of expanding upon mental health laws, or preventing copycats through media guidelines, the prime ministers of both countries at the time implemented firearms control. John Howard in Australia, and Tony Blair in the UK. These laws not only affected, say, shooting sports, but also those who worked on farms, because in rural areas, firearms are a utility item. They're used for pest control, keeping animals from eating crops, or protecting livestock from predators. In the event you live out in the middle of nowhere and someone tries robbing you or doing other unpleasant things, you might need a firearm for self-defense. That's why rural life and firearms tend to go hand in hand around the world. Domestic protest against both of these reforms were met with derision in the corporate media of the time. They were dismissed as gun nuts or hicks or various similar epithets. Effectively, it's an austerity measure, not unlike many of the others that were passed in the 80s or since. Neoliberal politicians and bureaucrats sneering down on those whose lives they just made harder. Using a crudely simple moral framing makes it much easier to politically sell this sort of thing. Neither of these policies was particularly effective, despite what many of their American apologists might say. For example, mass shootings continued, even in the UK. For example, the UK had the Birmingham barbecue shooting in 2019. There was the Belfast school shooting in 2018 in the UK. There was the Maidan College Kennet Skills Center shooting in 2018 as well. Australia had the Margaret River murder-suicides near Perth in Western Australia in 2018. There was the Prahan Love nightclub shooting in April of 2019. And another one, perhaps ironically, in Darwin, Australia in June of 2019. Those are just very small entries on a long list that many neoliberal politicians and their apologists pretend doesn't exist. They pass the cost of their horrible policies down to you. You are the one who suffers, and they don't care. These are the same people who admire neoliberal racist war criminals like John Howard and Tony Blair. However, their power is waning. As more and more people step outside the old 20th century models, so too will neoliberalism be thrown upon history's trash heap. Their spite and their cruelty will be reversed in this century to come. Because unlike them, I believe in a better tomorrow.